Rebecca Morgan, now Olivia Reed, discovers her husband Mark's affair with her best friend Jessica, shattering her world. As financial director of Mark's sustainable architecture firm, Green Frame Designs, she uncovers his attempts to sideline her professionally. Fueled by betrayal, Rebecca consults a ruthless divorce attorney and learns of a key person clause in a major contract, giving her leverage. With newfound resolve, she begins to strategize, meeting Victoria Hayes, who offers to back a new venture. As Mark pushes for a shady acquisition, Rebecca plans a bold move to reclaim her future, leaving readers eager for her next step. If Olivia's journey of resilience and reinvention inspires you, join our community. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of triumph over adversity. Your support fuels our storytelling. Hit that subscribe button and share where you're tuning in from. Stay tuned for tomorrow's special story. Thank you. The scent of herb-crusted salmon lingered in the air, now tinged with the faint char of overcooked vegetables, as Olivia Reed, once Rebecca Morgan, sat frozen at the kitchen island. The table she'd spent hours perfecting for their 12th anniversary glowed softly under flickering candlelight, a mocking tableau of devotion. The expensive Pinot Noir, Mark's favorite, sat unopened, its deep red bottle catching the dim light like a silent accusation. Her phone's buzz had shattered the illusion hours ago, a text from Jessica, her college friend, slicing through her carefully curated evening. "We need to talk. It's about Mark. I'm so sorry." Olivia's stomach had plummeted, a sickening lurch that left her breathless. Jessica's odd behavior, canceled lunches, fleeting glances, the weight of unspoken words, had gnawed at her for months. She'd attributed it to Jessica's fresh divorce, the strain of rebuilding a life. Never once did she suspect her friend carried a secret that would unravel her world. When she called, Jessica's voice trembled. Each word a jagged shard. A 6-month affair with Mark, stolen afternoons at the Portland Hotel every Thursday, timed perfectly with Olivia's weekly executive meetings at Green Frame Designs. Meetings Mark had urged her to lead, framing them as a career boost. "I'm ending it," Jessica had sobbed. "You deserve to know. I couldn't live with this anymore." Olivia hung up without a word, the phone slipping from her hand as she stared at the marble countertop, its cool veins a map of the life they'd built together. Everything felt staged now, a cruel performance she'd been too naive to question. Their West Hills home, with its sweeping view of Mount Hood, was no longer a sanctuary but a set piece. The matching Audis in the garage, the Tuscan vacation photo on the credenza, props in a marriage she'd believed was real. When Mark's key turned in the lock at 7:30, raindrops glistening on his cashmere coat, he strode in with a bottle of champagne, his voice bright with rehearsed affection. "Happy anniversary, babe." The words echoed through their open-concept living room. But when his eyes met hers, his smile faltered. "What's wrong? Did something happen with the Carson Project?" The Carson Project, the $40 million eco-resort that could elevate Green Frame, their sustainable architecture firm, to national acclaim. It was Mark's obsession, the reason for his late nights, or so he'd claimed. Olivia's voice was steady, cutting through the haze of her shock. Jessica called. His face betrayed him in an instant, a flicker of panic, a quick calculation, then a mask of confusion. "Jessica, what did she want?" he asked, setting the champagne down with deliberate care. "Don't," she whispered, her voice cracking. "She told me everything." What followed was a masterclass in deflection, each excuse more hollow than the last. He denied it at first, then downplayed it as just physical, a meaningless fling born of stress. The firm demanded so much, he said. Olivia had been distant, consumed by her role as financial director. If she'd been more attentive, more present, maybe he wouldn't have strayed. She let him ramble, his words circling like a vulture over the carcass of their marriage. As she watched him, a strange detachment settled over her. This man, her partner of over a decade, was a stranger. His betrayal not just in the affair, but in the meticulous orchestration of her schedule to hide it, the complicity of her closest friend, the erosion of trust she'd never seen coming. "I want you out tonight," she said, cutting through his monologue. "Stay at the downtown loft. I don't care. Just go." His tone hardened, the charm slipping. "Becca, be reasonable. You're emotional right now." We should talk when you've calmed down. It was just, if you say just sex one more time, Mark, I swear to God, she snapped. And don't call me Becca, not anymore. His face shifted again, adopting the placating look he reserved for difficult clients. We need to be smart about this, he said, gesturing at their home. The company, the house, our finances, they're all tied together. You're the financial director. You know we can't just unravel everything because you're upset. The company. Of course, that was his shield. Green Frame was Mark's identity, his legacy. To him, Olivia was merely the supportive wife, the number cruncher who smoothed investor meetings with her approachable personality. As he'd once patronizingly described it, for 8 years she'd poured her soul into that firm, transforming it from a scrappy startup into a regional powerhouse. Now he wielded it as leverage against her. I'll be at the office tomorrow, she said flatly. We'll keep up appearances until I decide my next steps. But this marriage is over. His shock was genuine, as if he'd never considered his actions might have consequences. You don't mean that, he said, reaching for her hand. She pulled away, standing. I've never meant anything more. After he left, grabbing an overnight bag and muttering promises to fix this, Olivia wandered their home like a specter. She opened a different bottle of wine, bypassing the anniversary Pinot, and moved from room to room, memories flickering like old film reels. The architectural awards on the wall, her wedding photos she'd insisted on displaying, despite Mark's complaints, the guest room meant to be a nursery until he'd declared children too complicated for their lives. She slept in that guest room, unable to face their bed, its emptiness a mirror of her heart. The next morning, she called in sick to Green Frame for the first time in 3 years, her voice steady despite the storm within. Hours were spent researching divorce attorneys, her grief giving way to a cold, sharp anger that felt like freedom. By noon, she'd secured an appointment with Eleanor Dawson, Portland's most formidable divorce lawyer. If Mark thought she'd crumble, a distraught wife he could manipulate to protect his precious firm, he'd misjudged the woman she'd become while building his dream. 2 days later, Olivia sat in Eleanor's sleek downtown office, the Willamette River glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Eleanor's minimalist decor matched her reputation for cutting through emotional chaos. You want a divorce, she said after Olivia recounted the betrayal. What are your priorities? The house, alimony, a clean break? Olivia leaned forward, her voice firm. I want what's fair. I've been Green Frame's financial director for 8 years. I've secured investors, turned projects around when we were sinking, and put my own career on hold to build Mark's vision. Eleanor nodded, her fingers flying over her laptop. Oregon's an equitable distribution state. You're entitled to a fair share of marital assets, including the business's value accrued during the marriage. Anything else? Olivia's eyes hardened. The Carson Project. It's a $40 million eco-resort that could make Green Frame a national name. Mark's been chasing it for months, but he doesn't know I'm the one who built the relationship with James Carson. We serve on a nonprofit board together. The contract's sustainability requirements? My idea tailored to James's priorities. Eleanor paused, her interest piqued. Go on, Olivia's voice grew steadier. The contract includes a key person clause I added after our last project imploded when a designer quit. It requires both Mark, as creative director, and me, as financial director, to stay involved for the project's duration. If I leave, Carson can renegotiate terms or walk away. A slow smile spread across Eleanor's face. That's significant leverage. Have you spoken to Carson since this situation arose? Olivia shook her head. Not yet. I wanted your advice first. Smart, Eleanor said. Now tell me about the company structure. Ownership? Olivia outlined it. Mark held 51%, she owned 22%, with the rest split between silent partners and key employees. The last valuation pegged Green Frame at $8.3 million, but with the Carson contract, it could soar to $15 million or more. Eleanor's next question caught her off guard. Do you want to stay with the company? Olivia hesitated. Green Frame was woven into her identity, its sustainable ethos a point of pride. But working with Mark now seemed unbearable, yet walking away from 8 years of her life felt like surrender. I don't know, she admitted. I can't imagine either option. You don't need to decide today, Eleanor said. But start documenting everything, your contributions, especially to the Carson project, and any business talks with Mark. Don't quit or make rash decisions about your role. As Olivia left, her phone buzzed. A text from Tyler Rodriguez, Green Frame's operations manager and her closest ally at work. You okay? Mark's acting weird, saying you've got food poisoning. Need anything? After a moment's hesitation, she replied, can we meet for coffee away from the office? Need someone I trust. His response was instant. Groundwork coffee, half an hour. Tyler was already at a corner table, 2 steaming cups before him, his warm brown eyes clouding with concern as she approached. That bad, huh? He said as she sat. Mark had an affair with Jessica, she said bluntly. Tyler's curse drew stares from nearby patrons. That bastard. And Jessica? I'm so sorry, Becca. It's over, she said, clutching her coffee. The marriage, I mean. I'm seeing a lawyer, but I need to figure out what to do about the company. Tyler leaned back, processing. This explains Mark's emergency meeting with the exec team this morning. He said you might take time off and he'd reassign your duties temporarily. A chill ran through her. He's trying to push me out. Tyler nodded grimly. Looks like it. But here's something he doesn't know. Carson called today asking for you specifically. There's a financing issue with the project's second phase, and he said he only wants to discuss it with you. She's the only one who gets what we're doing, Mark, he said. A spark of vindication flared in Olivia's chest. Did you tell Mark? Just that Carson called, Tyler said, sipping his coffee. Not the part about you. He watched her carefully. The team leans on you more than Mark realizes. He's the big idea guy, but you're the one who makes it real. As they talked, Tyler revealed more. Mark had been interviewing replacement CFOs for months, claiming it was about team expansion. He'd been sidelining Olivia from client communications and, most shockingly, had started acquisition talks with a larger firm, discussions she, as financial director, should have been part of but was deliberately excluded from. Why tell me this? She asked. Tyler shifted, uncomfortable. Because it's wrong, and because if you're fighting for your place, you need to know what you're up against. By the time she returned home, her shock had crystallized into determination. Mark's betrayal wasn't just personal. He'd been undermining her professionally for months. The affair was merely the most glaring symptom of his deceit. That night, she dove into Green Frame's financials, leveraging her access to uncover vulnerabilities Mark likely assumed she'd never exploit. By dawn, she had a sharper sense of her leverage and her goals. When Mark called the next day, his voice was tentative. We need to talk about handling this at the office. I'll be there tomorrow, she said calmly. We'll keep things professional, as I said, as I promised. And the Carson project, he pressed, his real fears surfacing. Don't worry, she replied, her voice edged with a new steel. I won't sabotage the business we built. But let's be clear, Mark. You didn't build Green Frame alone, and you won't rebuild your life alone either. His silence told her he was finally beginning to grasp the magnitude of what he faced. On Monday, Olivia stepped off the elevator into Green Frame's Pearl District office, its plant walls and soaring windows a testament to Mark's design genius. Conversations hushed, eyes darted away. The news had spread. Her glass-walled office, next to Mark's, felt like a fishbowl as she headed to the shared conference room. There, to her surprise, stood James Carson, tall and commanding in his eco-conscious suit, his warm smile a lifeline in the tension. Rebecca, he said, rising to greet her, I hope you don't mind my dropping by unannounced. Your husband seemed quite surprised to see me. Olivia's smile was genuine, though her pulse raced. It's always good to see you, James. What brings you here? His expression grew grave. Concern, rumors of significant changes at Green Frame. As someone who's committed $40 million to your vision, I want to hear it from both of you. What's happening? Before she could answer, Mark appeared in the doorway, his client's smile polished but brittle. James, he said, his voice smooth, I was just about to update you on the project timeline. The air thickened with unspoken questions, and Olivia felt the weight of the moment. This was where the real battle lines would be drawn. The air in the conference room was thick with tension, a silent storm brewing beneath the polished surface of professionalism. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Mount Hood loomed in serene indifference, its snow-capped peak a stark contrast to the turmoil within. As we settled into the sleek leather chairs, I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing against my chest. James, our client, broke the silence with a directness that sliced through the pretense. "I've heard rumors," he said, his voice steady but laced with concern, "that personal issues between you two might be affecting the company. I need to know if this will impact the Carson project." Mark, my soon-to-be ex-husband, didn't hesitate. His response was swift, polished, and practiced, as if he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. "James, I assure you," he said, leaning forward with that charismatic grin he wielded like a weapon, "any personal matters between Rebecca and me will not interfere with Greenframe's commitment to delivering exceptional results on your project." His words were smooth, but I caught the flicker of unease in his eyes, the way his fingers tightened around the pen he held. He was performing, as always, but I knew the cracks in his facade better than anyone. James turned to me, his gaze steady and expectant. "And you, Rebecca, what's your take?" My heart thudded, but I took a slow, deliberate breath, grounding myself. This was my moment to reclaim the narrative. "James," I began, my voice calm but firm, "you know I've always valued transparency with our clients. Yes, Mark and I are separating. That's personal. But professionally, there are things you need to know." I felt Mark's posture stiffen beside me, his discomfort radiating like heat. "The key person clause in our contract exists to protect your interests and the project's integrity," I continued, holding James's gaze. "I'm fully committed to the Carson project's success, but we need to discuss what my role will look like moving forward." And James leaned forward, intrigued, his fingers steepled. "What are you proposing?" I glanced at Mark, noting the storm brewing in his expression, and pressed on. "I'd like to take on an independent oversight role for the project's financials. I'd report directly to you on budget adherence, sustainability benchmarks, and financial projections, separate from my duties at Greenframe." Mark's face darkened, his jaw tightening as if he could physically restrain my words. "That sounds like a conflict of interest," he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Actually," James interjected, his tone thoughtful, "it sounds like a solution to a potential conflict of interest. Rebecca, I've always respected your financial rigor. If you're willing to provide that level of transparency, I'm all for it." Mark's forced smile was a brittle mess, barely concealing his frustration. "Of course," he said, his voice tight, "we can work out the details." James waved a hand, his confidence unshaken. "I trust Rebecca to handle it. She's the one who understood my vision from the start." When James left, the room felt smaller, the air heavier. Mark closed the conference room door with a precision that bordered on menace, his control a thin veneer over his anger. "What the hell was that, Rebecca?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "Are you trying to destroy everything we've built?" My heart pounded, but I met his gaze without flinching. "No, Mark," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions within me. "I'm trying to salvage what's left after the wreckage you created. Not just with your affair, but with your months-long campaign to push me out of the company I helped build." His expression flickered, surprise, guilt, then defiance. "That's absurd," he said, but the crack in his voice betrayed him. "Is it?" I countered, leaning forward, my voice sharp with the weight of months of betrayal. "The secret acquisition meetings, the interviews with potential CFOs to replace me, cutting me out of client communications. Did you think Tyler wouldn't tell me?" His jaw twitched, a muscle betraying his composure. "Tyler needs to remember who signs his checks," he growled, his tone dipping into something uglier, a threat that made my stomach twist. "Threats now," I said, standing and gathering my notebook, my movements deliberate. "That's low, even for you. Let me be clear, Mark. I'm not out to sabotage Greenframe, but I won't let you erase me from what I helped create. We have two options. We work together professionally while our divorce moves forward, or you buy me out at a price that reflects my true contribution, not just my ownership percentage." His eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a chilling quiet I'd heard only a handful of times in our marriage. "You're overplaying your hand, Becca. I started this company. My name is on the door. My reputation brings in the clients. I didn't back down. And my work keeps them, I shot back. Ask yourself why James insisted on speaking to me about the financial structures. It's not because of your charm. I turned and walked out, leaving him gripping the back of a chair, his knuckles white with rage. For the first time in our marriage, I had the last word, and the weight of it felt like a small victory in a war I hadn't chosen. Over the next few weeks, Green Frame settled into an uneasy truce. Mark and I maintained a facade of professionalism, our interactions reduced to curt emails and carefully choreographed group meetings. The staff tiptoed around us, their unease palpable, though I noticed a subtle shift. Team members who believed in the company's sustainability mission, those who joined because of my vision, not Mark's reputation, sought me out, their support quiet but unwavering. My independent role on the Carson project, backed by James's unequivocal support, gave me a shield Mark hadn't anticipated. He tried to sideline me, but James's insistence on my involvement was a wall he couldn't breach. Still, the daily grind was a constant reminder of betrayal. Mark's affair with Jessica was only the beginning. The real wound was his calculated effort to erase me from Green Frame. Every sidelong glance, every whispered conversation that stopped when I entered a room, chipped away at my resolve. I knew this wasn't sustainable. I needed a way out, a path that didn't mean surrendering everything I'd built. The answer came unexpectedly in the form of a late-night phone call. "Is this Rebecca Morgan?" a woman's voice asked, confident and measured. "Yes," I replied, cautious. "Who's this?" "Victoria Hayes, managing partner at Meridian Capital. We specialize in strategic investments in sustainable industries. I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you." My heart skipped as I sank into my chair. Meridian Capital was a titan on the West Coast, known for its commitment to long-term, environmentally conscious investments. "I'm listening," I said, my voice steady despite the spark of hope igniting within me. "I'll be direct," Victoria said. "We've been watching Green Frame for some time. Your work integrating financial viability with sustainability metrics is exceptional. The Carson project in particular aligns with our vision for innovation with growth potential." I swallowed, choosing my words carefully. "Thank you, but why are you calling me and not Mark, the majority owner?" There was a brief pause, and I could almost hear her smile. "We're aware of the situation at Green Frame. Our interest is in your approach to sustainable finance. We'd like to explore possibilities that could benefit all parties, including you." By the end of the call, I'd agreed to meet Victoria for dinner the next evening at a discreet restaurant in a neighboring town. As I hung up, my mind raced with possibilities I hadn't dared consider. For the first time since discovering Mark's betrayal, I didn't cry myself to sleep. Instead, I stayed up, researching Meridian Capital, Victoria Hayes, and the future I was only beginning to imagine. The restaurant Victoria chose was elegant yet understated, tucked into a converted Victorian house in a quiet neighborhood. She was already seated when I arrived, a striking woman in her 50s, with a sleek silver bob and an air of quiet authority. "Rebecca," she greeted, standing to shake my hand, her grip firm and warm. "Thank you for meeting me on short notice." Over dinner, she wasted no time. Meridian has been tracking sustainable architecture trends for years. Green Frame consistently stands out as an undervalued company with immense potential, particularly in how you've woven financial and environmental sustainability together. "That's been my focus," I said, my voice steady but my heart racing. "Finding the intersection where environmental responsibility becomes a financial strength, not just a moral stance." Victoria nodded, her eyes sharp with approval. "Exactly why I wanted to meet. We know your position at Green Frame is complicated. We'd like to offer an alternative." I leaned forward, keeping my expression neutral, despite the hope surging within. "I'm listening." "Meridian wants to back you in launching a new venture," she said, her voice calm but electrifying. "Your expertise, our capital, a firm built around your sustainable finance principles, free from the baggage of your current situation." The offer was staggering, a lifeline I hadn't dared hope for, a clean break, a fresh start, everything I'd been unable to envision. "It's incredible," I said carefully, "but I have obligations at Green Frame, especially with the Carson project." Victoria's smile was knowing. "The Carson project could migrate to your new venture if that's what James wants. The key person clause gives you leverage. If you leave, he has every right to reconsider his options. My mind spun. You're suggesting I walk away from Greenframe and take its biggest client with me? Victoria shrugged, her elegance unshaken. I'm suggesting you recognize your own value and build something that can't be taken from you. What clients choose is their decision. By the end of dinner, I hadn't committed, but I left with a business plan template, a proposed funding structure, and Victoria's private number. Take your time, she said as we parted, but not too much. Opportunities like this don't wait forever. The next morning, an email from Mark awaited me, copied to the entire executive team. Executive strategy meeting, 10:00 a.m. Attendance mandatory. The conference room was a pressure cooker when I arrived. Mark sat at the head of the table, flanked by two strangers in sharp suits. Tyler caught my eye, his expression a silent warning. "Let's get started," Mark said, his voice clipped. "I'd like to introduce Richard Dawson and Stephen Wells from Arcadia Partners. They're here to discuss a strategic partnership to take Greenframe to the next level." I kept my face neutral as I took my seat. Arcadia Partners was a development firm notorious for luxury projects with token green elements, exactly the kind of greenwashing Greenframe had always opposed. Mark's presentation outlined an acquisition deal that would absorb Greenframe into Arcadia's corporate machine. He would remain creative director, but financial control would shift entirely to Arcadia. My role? Conveniently unmentioned. When the Arcadia representative stepped out, Mark finally addressed me. "Rebecca, as financial director, I'm sure you have questions about the numbers." I met his gaze evenly. "Several, starting with why I'm only now hearing about a deal that would fundamentally change the company I co-own, and how does this align with our sustainability mission, given Arcadia's reputation?" The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. "Your personal situation has complicated certain discussions," Mark said, his words careful but laced with venom. "As for the mission, Arcadia has committed to our sustainability standards." "On paper," I countered, "their projects tell a different story. More importantly, this deal requires approval from all shareholders, including me. Was that part of your plan, or were you hoping I'd just sign off?" Mark's jaw tightened. "Your 22% isn't enough to block the deal if the other shareholders approve." "True, son," I said, my voice steady. "But what about the Carson contract? Have you discussed how James will react? His key person clause names me, not just Greenframe." A flicker of doubt crossed Mark's face. "James understands business necessities," he said, but his confidence wavered. "Does he?" I pressed. "Why don't we call him now and find out?" The meeting unraveled from there, the executive team fracturing into those loyal to Mark's vision of expansion and those wary of abandoning our principles. As I returned to my office, Tyler followed, closing the door. "That was brutal," he said quietly, "but necessary. Mark's been working the shareholders behind your back. The silent partners are already on board." I sighed, bitterness rising. "Of course, they care about profits, not principles." Tyler hesitated. "There's more. Mark's been documenting performance issues in your file, building a case to remove you as financial director for cause. He can't force you to sell your shares, but he's trying to strip your position." The revelation should have stung, but it only sharpened my resolve. "Thank you, Tyler," I said. "I need to make some calls." I reached out to my attorney, updating her on Arcadia's offer and Victoria's proposal. Then I called James Carson, requesting an urgent off-site meeting. Finally, I dialed Victoria. "I'm interested," I said simply, "but I want to discuss a different approach." Over the next 2 weeks, I worked in two worlds. Publicly, I documented everything. Every email, every meeting minute, every financial projection, proving the Arcadia deal would undermine our sustainability commitments. I compiled a portfolio of my contributions to Greenframe, client relationships I'd nurtured, financing structures I'd designed, sustainability metrics that defined our brand. Privately, I collaborated with Victoria's team on a new vision, a firm that preserved Greenframe's soul while building something new. Mark, meanwhile, escalated his efforts to undermine me. Projects were reassigned without my knowledge. I was excluded from client meetings. Documents I needed vanished. And once I found my computer had been accessed overnight, Financial models altered in ways that could have caused catastrophic errors if I hadn't caught them. His hostility was no longer veiled. He operated with the arrogance of someone who believed he'd already won. He had the majority shares, the silent partners, and a lucrative Arcadia deal. What he didn't know was that I'd stopped fighting for my place at Greenframe. I was building something bigger. The breaking point came when I discovered, through a paralegal's email mistake, that Mark had scheduled a final signing meeting with Arcadia without telling me. That evening, I called Victoria. "It's time," I said. "Are you still interested in my alternative proposal?" Her response was immediate. "More than ever. The paperwork is ready when you are." 3 days later, I submitted my resignation from Greenframe, effective immediately. Mark's reply was a venomous mix of threats and dismissal. "Your timing is noted. We'll discuss your shares in the divorce proceedings." He thought I'd crumbled, that I'd fled under pressure, leaving him to seal the Arcadia deal unchallenged. He had no idea what was coming. 6 months later, I had vanished from Portland's professional scene. No LinkedIn updates, no industry events, no contact with former colleagues except Tyler, who'd left Greenframe shortly after me. The divorce proceedings dragged on through attorneys, Mark confident that my departure had weakened my position. But I hadn't been idle. I'd legally changed my name to Olivia Reed, my grandmother's name, a quiet reclaiming of my identity. With Victoria's backing, I'd spent those months building a new venture, one that married my expertise in sustainable finance with Meridian's resources, free from the shadow of Mark's betrayal. As Olivia Reed, I stepped into a future I'd only begun to envision, one where my value couldn't be erased, my voice couldn't be silenced, and my principles couldn't be compromised. The Carson Project followed me, James's loyalty a testament to the trust I'd earned. Mark's deal with Arcadia moved forward, but without the Carson contract, it faltered, exposing the cracks in his vision. I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I felt free, not just from Mark, but from the weight of a past I'd outgrown. Olivia Reed wasn't just a name, it was a promise to myself, a new beginning built on the strength I'd always had, but had only now fully embraced. After losing my husband at 38, I pieced my life back together, brick by emotional brick, and set out for a fresh start in Seattle. There, my friend Victoria welcomed me into her circle of sustainable investment experts, a group pulsating with ideas about a greener future. I threw myself into their world, driven by a fierce determination to create something new, something that would carry forward the soul of Greenframe, the company I'd helped build, but elevated into a vision far grander than its original scope. Every late night spent sketching out plans, every meeting where I pitched bold ideas, was fueled by a quiet resolve to honor what I'd lost while forging something unbreakable in its place. Back in Portland, Greenframe was unraveling without me. The Carson Project, a cornerstone of the company's portfolio, had ground to a halt when James, a key client, invoked a contract clause tied to my involvement, freezing the deal and plunging Greenframe into a cash flow nightmare. The company's ambitious Arcadia acquisition had collapsed spectacularly after a journalist, tipped off anonymously, published a blistering expose revealing how the deal would erode Greenframe's commitment to sustainability. The fallout was brutal. Several vital team members, including Tyler, walked away, their faith in the company shattered. The office, once buzzing with purpose, now felt like a ship taking on water, with no one sure how to stop the flood. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, a crack in Greenframe's crumbling foundation. One of its silent partners, grappling with financial troubles elsewhere, decided to offload his 15% stake. Within a single day, Meridian Capital, a firm I'd carefully aligned myself with, snapped it up through a shell company that kept my name out of the spotlight. Over the next 2 months, we quietly acquired another 12% from another silent partner, using the same discreet strategy. With Victoria's cleverly designed investment vehicles, we now held 27% of Greenframe, not enough to outvote Mark's controlling 51%, but enough to make our presence undeniable. It was the foothold I needed, a way to plant my flag and prepare for the next move. The final phase of my plan unfolded with precision. Through Meridian's vast network, we launched Horizon Innovations, a new firm built on the unyielding principle of true sustainability: environmental, financial, and human. I stepped into the role of CEO, joined by a team of former Green Frame employees who believed in the vision. We approached Green Frame's biggest clients with a compelling pitch. Join a company that didn't just pay lip service to green ideals, but lived them in every decision. The response was swift and seismic. Within weeks, Green Frame's project pipeline shrank by 40% as clients flocked to Horizon. The company's already strained cash reserves bled out, forcing Mark to lay off staff and abandon office space just to keep the lights on. Watching from afar, I felt a pang of sorrow for the people caught in the crossfire, but also a steely certainty that this was the only way to reclaim what I'd helped build. When Green Frame's valuation hit its lowest point in half a decade, Meridian Capital made its move, a straightforward offer to buy the company at a price that, while fair given its dire state, was a shadow of its former worth. Mark predictably rejected it with a mix of pride and desperation. So we played our final card. Horizon Innovations submitted a nearly identical offer, but with one critical difference. I would personally attend the meeting to discuss it. And so I found myself sitting across from Mark in a stark conference room at his lawyer's office, watching his face as the truth dawned. His eyes widened, then narrowed, as the pieces clicked into place. "Rebecca," he whispered, his face paling as if he'd seen a ghost. "Olivia," I corrected softly, my voice steady, but carrying the weight of everything we'd been through. "Olivia Reed. It's been a while, Mark." His shock gave way to fury, his voice rising. You can't. It's fraud, some kind of trick." Victoria, seated beside me, leaned forward with her trademark calm. "Not at all, Mark. Meridian Capital and Horizon Innovations have made a legitimate offer for a company in distress. Ms. Reed's prior connection to Green Frame was fully disclosed in the legal documentation. Perhaps you should have paid closer attention to the details." Her words were smooth, but they cut, and I saw Mark flinch at the irony. He tried to erase me from the company I'd helped create, only to find himself outmaneuvered by the woman he had underestimated. "Wait, ma'am," he asked at last, his voice raw. "Revenge?" I shook my head, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Not revenge. Reclamation. You took something I poured my heart into, our company, our marriage, and tried to strip it of everything it stood for. I'm building something better from the ruins." In the end, Mark had no choice. Green Frame was teetering on the edge of collapse, its value gutted, its clients gone. Without our capital, it wouldn't survive the year. He accepted the offer, his signature on the paperwork a quiet surrender. The acquisition closed on a crisp Tuesday morning, and by that afternoon I walked into Green Frame's downsized office, now Horizon Innovations property, my heart pounding with a mix of triumph and trepidation. The remaining staff, many of whom I'd worked alongside for years, looked at me with a spectrum of emotions. Shock, uncertainty, and from a few, a tentative spark of hope. "Some of you know me as Rebecca Morgan," I began, my voice clear and steady despite the weight of the moment. "Today, I'm Olivia Reed, CEO of Horizon Innovations. I know you've been through chaos and doubt, but that ends now. Horizon is built on real sustainability, financial integrity, and valuing the people who make our work possible. We're here to rebuild together." In the months that followed, we did just that. We brought back key team members who had left, their trust in the vision renewed. We rebuilt client relationships, not with empty promises, but with a commitment to principles that ran deeper than marketing slogans. Most importantly, we fostered a culture rooted in integrity. Something I'd learned the hard way was non-negotiable, both in business and in life. James Carson was one of the first to sign on, reviving his eco-resort project with a passion that mirrored my own. "This is what I always wanted," he had told me during our contract signing, his eyes bright with conviction. "A partner who sees sustainability not as a buzzword, but as the foundation of everything we do." The divorce from Mark finalized around the same time as the acquisition. He walked away with far less than he'd imagined, financially and emotionally, his dreams of grandeur undone by his own choices. Word reached me through old colleagues that he'd left Portland for a job at a traditional architecture firm in Chicago, a move that felt like a retreat from everything he'd once claimed to stand for. Jessica, my former best friend, had also vanished from my life, her betrayal too deep to repair, despite her later attempts at apologies. I mourned the loss of our friendship, but I couldn't dwell on it. There was too much to build. Olivia Reed became more than a name change. She became the woman I hadn't realized I could be. Confident, strategic, unapologetic about her values. She was a far cry from the Rebecca who had spent years supporting someone else's vision at the cost of her own. One evening, a year after the acquisition, I was working late in my office. Mark's old glass-walled space, now transformed with warm wood paneling and lush green plants that reflected my own sense of beauty and purpose. Tyler knocked, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Thought we should mark the occasion," he said, stepping inside. "The Carson Project just won the National Sustainability Award, the first time a Pacific Northwest firm has taken it in a decade." I smiled, unsurprised but deeply proud. The project had been a labor of love, a testament to what was possible when profit and planet were aligned. "We'll celebrate with the team tomorrow," I said, but motioned for him to sit. Some moments deserved to be savored quietly. As he poured the champagne, Tyler studied me, his expression thoughtful. "When you first told me about Mark and Jessica, I thought you'd be broken. Most people would have been." I took the glass he offered, turning his question over in my mind. "I was, for about 2 days. Then I realized something. Mark betrayed me because he never truly saw me. He saw the supportive wife, the capable CFO, but never the woman with dreams as big as, or bigger than, his own." Tyler nodded, a slow smile spreading. "His mistake, his loss." "And my wake-up call," I added, raising my glass. We toasted in silence, the Portland skyline glowing softly outside, a city I now saw through new eyes. Not just because we'd moved to a higher floor in a sleeker building, but because I was no longer the woman who lived in someone else's shadow. "Have you ever regretted it?" Tyler asked after a pause. "Not the company, that was genius. But changing your name, reinventing yourself so completely, leaving Rebecca behind." The question caught me off guard. Had I regretted it? There were moments early on when the name Olivia felt foreign, like a coat that didn't quite fit. I'd catch my reflection, a sleek bob instead of the long waves Mark loved, bold colors replacing the muted tones I'd once worn to blend in, and feel a flicker of disorientation. But regret? "No," I said at last. Rebecca was defined by others, Mark's wife, Greenframe's CFO, Jessica's friend. Olivia is defined by her own vision, her own values. That's who I needed to become. Tyler raised his glass again. "To Olivia Reed, then, and to new beginnings." I echoed his toast, but my thoughts were already racing ahead. Horizon was thriving, growing from a core team of 15 to 48, with plans for offices in Seattle and Denver. Our acquisition of Greenframe had given us a foundation, but our new projects, bold, boundary-pushing initiatives Mark would have dismissed as too idealistic, were what truly defined us. One morning, as I reviewed plans for a zero-carbon community development, Victoria called, her voice brimming with excitement. "Seen the business section yet?" "Not yet," I said, bracing for news. "Trouble?" "Far from it. Northwest Business Journal named Horizon the region's fastest-growing sustainable company. They're calling you the visionary leader redefining sustainability in the built environment." Pride swelled in my chest, tinged with a quiet vindication. "Any mention of Greenframe or Mark?" "Just a line about Horizon acquiring a struggling, local firm," she said, her tone carefully neutral, but laced with satisfaction. "The focus is on the future, not the past. The future, not the past." That phrase stayed with me as I hung up. At first, part of me had been driven by a need to prove Mark wrong, to show the world what I could do. But that fire had faded, replaced by something deeper. The joy of building something true to myself. Success wasn't about outshining Mark. It was about proving to myself what I was capable of. Later that day, as I prepared for a meeting with a potential client, a luxury developer curious about sustainable design, my assistant knocked. "Jessica Palmer is here to see you," she said, her voice neutral. "No appointment." My heart stuttered, a rush of emotions. surprise, anger, curiosity, colliding. Jessica, my once closest friend, who'd betrayed me in the cruelest way, standing by as my marriage crumbled. We hadn't spoken since that shattering phone call over a year ago. "How does she look?" I asked, stalling for time. "Nervous," my assistant replied. "She said she'd understand if you don't want to see her, but hopes for 5 minutes." The old Rebecca might have sent her away, too raw to face the pain, but Olivia Reed didn't shy away from hard truths. "Send her in," I said, and pushed my next meeting back 15 minutes. Jessica stepped inside, hesitant, her once confident presence diminished. Her hair was shorter, her face gaunt, her designer wardrobe replaced by something plain and unassuming. She stopped just inside the door, as if unsure she belonged. For a moment, we just looked at each other, the weight of our shared history hanging heavy between us. Jessica stepped into my office, her presence a quiet disruption to the rhythm of my day. The woman who had once been my closest confidant, my partner in countless shopping trips and shared dinners, now seemed like a shadow of that vibrant friend. Her shoulders carried a subtle weight, as if the years had pressed down on her, dimming the spark I once knew. She hesitated at the threshold, her lips parting as if to say my old name, Rebecca, before correcting herself with a supplication. "Olivia, thank you for seeing me." The slip stung, a reminder of the life I'd left behind, but I gestured to the chairs across from my desk, my face composed. "Please sit. What brings you here, Jessica?" She settled into the chair, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles paled. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke, the words tumbling out like they'd been bottled up too long. "I've been in therapy for months, working through everything. My choices, the people I hurt, the reasons behind it all." Her eyes flicked to mine, searching for a reaction, but I kept my expression steady, waiting. She swallowed, then pressed on. "I'm not here to beg for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but my therapist said part of healing is owning what I've done, not just to myself, but to the people I've wronged." "Then you wronged me," I said, my voice calm but heavy with the truth we both felt. The understatement hung in the air, a quiet acknowledgement of the betrayal that had shattered my world. Jessica nodded, her gaze dropping to her hands for a moment, her face etched with shame. "More than I realized at the time," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I told myself it was just about Mark, that our friendship was separate and untouched. I boxed it away in my mind, convinced myself it wasn't about you. But there's no excuse for what I did." Despite the ache her words stirred, a spark of curiosity flickered within me. I leaned forward slightly, my voice measured. "Why that night, Jessica? The night before our anniversary? You could have ended things with him quietly, and I might never have known. Why confess then?" Her eyes lifted, wide with surprise, as if she hadn't expected me to pinpoint that moment. She paused, her brow furrowing as she sifted through her own tangled thoughts. "I've replayed that moment over and over," she said finally. "I think deep down I wanted to be stopped. Not consciously, maybe, but some part of me craved consequences, needed someone to call it what it was, wrong, and force it to end. I tilted my head, a new clarity dawning, and that someone was me, not Mark, who was happy to keep betraying his wife, but me, the one who'd hold you both accountable. My words weren't accusatory, just a quiet realization of the role I'd been cast in. Jessica's nod was almost imperceptible, her voice soft with regret. "Yes, it was cowardly, using you to end something I didn't have the strength to stop myself." Silence settled between us, thick with the weight of our shared past. I could feel the echoes of our old friendship. Late-night talks, shared laughter, the ease of a bond I'd thought unbreakable, now tangled with the pain of her betrayal. Yet, beneath it all, I sensed her struggle, the way she was grappling with her own guilt. Jessica broke the silence, her voice tentative. "I saw the article about Horizon, the award, your success. I'm genuinely happy for you, Olivia." "Thank you," I replied, keeping my tone neutral, but sincere. She hesitated, then added, "Mark's engaged again, to someone at his new firm in Chicago. I thought you should hear it from me, not through social media." Her eyes studied me, bracing for a reaction. I took a moment, searching for the sting of jealousy or anger that news of Mark might once have sparked. But all I felt was a distant pity for this new woman, someone who hadn't yet learned the lessons I'd paid for in heartbreak. I hope she has better boundaries than we did, I said, my voice steady, final. Jessica stood, preparing to leave. Thank you for hearing me out, Olivia, for letting me take responsibility. I rose too, meeting her gaze. I appreciate that you came, Jessica. It matters. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she blinked them back, nodding. Does it help at all, knowing I've been wrestling with this too? That it wasn't just you? Her question hung there, vulnerable. I considered it carefully, weighing the truth. Yes, I said at last. Not because I want you to suffer, but because it means what happened wasn't meaningless. We're both learning, becoming different people because of it. After she left, I stood by my office window, gazing out at Portland's springtime sprawl. Cherry blossoms and new leaves softened the city's edges, a vibrant green against the urban gray. In the distance, I could just make out the old green frame offices in the Pearl District, now home to a tech startup. The living walls I'd designed were still visible, but our logo was long gone, replaced by someone else's vision. Jessica's visit had stirred memories I'd buried beneath the relentless drive to build Horizon. Memories of that night, the gut punch of her confession, the disorientation of realizing the two people I'd trusted most had betrayed me in the most intimate way. I'd spent countless nights dissecting my marriage, wondering what signs I'd missed, what parts of myself I had dimmed to prop up Mark's ambitions. But with those painful memories came a quiet pride in how far I'd come, not just in building Horizon into a beacon of sustainable architecture, but in rediscovering myself, my values, my strength. The intercom buzzed, pulling me back to the present. Your 3 acquirers here, my assistant's voice announced. Send them in, I replied, turning from the window and the past it had briefly summoned. Evan Blackwell of Blackwell Properties strode in, radiating the polished confidence of wealth. Tailored suit, impeccable haircut, a smile that spoke of someone used to getting his way. I recognized the type instantly. I'd been married to a less affluent version of him. Ms. Reed, he greeted, extending a hand. A pleasure to finally meet. Your reputation precedes you. I shook his hand firmly. Likewise, Mr. Blackwell. I've reviewed your portfolio, impressive scale, distinctive aesthetic. He settled into the chair, his eyes sweeping my office with a calculating glance. Your firm's made quite a splash in a short time. The Carson project especially, those carbon metrics are ambitious. I corrected him, my tone calm but firm. Not ambitious, necessary, given what we know about climate impacts, and achievable, as the project proves. His smile tightened, not reaching his eyes. We're interested in adding sustainable elements to our lakeside development, not the full Carson approach. Our market expects certain luxuries, but enough for tax incentives and a stronger corporate responsibility profile. There it was, the truth. Not a commitment to real change, but a veneer of green for marketing and profit. The old Rebecca might have compromised, eager to land a high-profile client, but Olivia Reed was different. I appreciate your interest, Mr. Blackwell, I said evenly, but Horizon may not be the right fit. We don't treat sustainability as an add-on or a marketing tactic. Our approach is all in, because halfway measures do more harm than good, creating an illusion of progress while propping up unsustainable systems. His expression hardened, surprise giving way to irritation. I thought you were a pragmatist, Ms. Reed. Surely there's room for incremental steps. I nodded. I am a pragmatist, which is why I know incrementalism isn't enough anymore. Our projects reflect that. The meeting ended politely but coolly, and as Blackwell left, I felt not regret but a quiet resolve. Once, I might have bent my principles to secure a deal, convincing myself it was just business. Not anymore, though. That evening, as I packed up, Tyler appeared in my doorway, leaning against the frame with a raised eyebrow. Did you really turn down Blackwell Properties? That lakeside project's worth $50 million. I smiled, slinging my bag over my shoulder. I did. They wanted sustainability theater, not the real thing. He shook his head, but his eyes held admiration. A year ago, you might have taken the deal. I nodded. A year ago, I was still finding my footing. Now I know what Horizon stands for, and I won't compromise that. We walked to the elevator, the office quiet as the workday wound down. Most of the team had left to prepare for the Carson Project's award ceremony that evening, a black tie event celebrating our sustainability honor. Speaking of the award, Tyler said as we descended, any chance you'll join us for dinner beforehand? Just Thai food, nothing fancy, moral support before the photographers descend. I hesitated. Since the divorce, I'd kept my social life tightly controlled, limiting it to professional events or occasional dinners with friends like Victoria or Eleanor. Solitude had been my sanctuary, a space to heal and redefine myself, but lately it felt more like a cage. That sounds nice, I said, surprising us both. Tyler's smile was warm. Great, 7 o'clock at Lotus Garden, a few blocks from the venue. As he turned to go, I called after him. Tyler, why did you leave Green Frame with me? Your job was secure. Mark valued you. He paused, considering. Because integrity matters to me, in the work and the people I work with. Some things are worth more than security. His words lingered as I prepared for the evening, slipping into a midnight blue gown I'd chosen for its elegance and defiance of the safe, supportive wife attire I'd once worn to Mark's events. At Lotus Garden, the hostess led me to a private room where, to my surprise, nearly 20 Horizon staff members awaited, all dressed for the ceremony, glasses raised in a toast. What's this? I asked, touched. A proper celebration, Eleanor said, handing me champagne, for the woman who made it all possible. The evening unfolded with warmth, delicious food, easy laughter, and later the awards ceremony where James Carson presented us with the sustainability honor. Amid the applause, I felt a profound sense of alignment. This was success, not vengeance, but creation, building something authentic from betrayal's ashes. Later, James approached me, his voice low. The name change, Olivia, it wasn't just about the divorce, was it? I met his gaze, struck by his insight. No, it was about becoming someone I chose to be, not someone shaped by others' expectations. He nodded, a knowing smile crossing his face. I get it. 30 years ago, I was James Carinelli from South Philly. The name change marked my own reinvention. We shared a quiet understanding, two people who'd rewritten their stories. To new names and second chances, he said, raising his glass. To becoming who we choose to be, I replied, clinking mine against his. As we maneuvered into the shadowed depths of the underground parking garage, Tyler glanced over with a teasing glint in his eye. Nervous? He asked, his voice light but probing. Cautious, I corrected, my tone steady but laced with the weight of experience. Growth is a tricky beast. It can lift you up or cut you down if you're not careful. I've watched too many companies lose their soul in the race to scale, trading their core values for quick wins. My words carried the conviction of someone who'd seen the fallout of ambition unchecked. Tyler nodded, his expression softening with understanding. That won't be Horizon's story, not while I'm here, he said, his voice brimming with quiet resolve. I met his gaze, my own certainty mirroring his. Agreed. The confidence in my voice wasn't an act. 2 years as Olivia Reed had forged me into someone who trusted her instincts, who could discern the fine line between compromise that served progress and concessions that eroded integrity. The woman I'd once been, Rebecca, who dimmed her own light to fit her husband's shadow, was gone. In her place stood someone who knew her value and wielded it unflinchingly. The meeting with the investors unfolded with the smooth precision I'd come to expect from our team. Victoria steered the discussion with her razor-sharp clarity, deftly navigating questions while I elaborated on our design philosophy and the practical strategies that brought it to life. The investors zeroed in on our employee structure, intrigued by Horizon's unconventional approach. We'd built a profit-sharing model that gave everyone, from executives to maintenance staff, a stake in the company's success. One investor, eyebrows raised, remarked, "That's unusual. Most firms at your stage prioritize shareholder returns over spreading equity so widely." I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. Most firms don't see sustainability as inseparable from human well-being. We've found that when people are truly invested in the outcome, they don't just work, they innovate, Our retention rate is 94% compared to the industry's 67%. That stability isn't just a number. It shows up in the quality of our projects and the trust our clients place in us. The investor nodded, impressed, and by the time they left, term sheets tentatively approved, their expressions radiating satisfaction. It was nearly 2 p.m. I returned to my office, my mind still buzzing from the meeting, only to find an unexpected sight, a cream-colored envelope, heavy and luxurious, resting on my desk. My name was embossed in elegant script, a detail that sparked curiosity. My assistant, hovering nearby, explained, "It arrived while you were out, hand-delivered. The messenger insisted on placing it directly on your desk." Intrigued, I slid open the envelope, revealing an invitation to the Governor's Environmental Innovation Awards. Horizon was being honored for our trailblazing work in urban sustainability, with the black tie ceremony set for next month at the state capitol. But it was the handwritten note tucked inside that stopped me cold. "Olivia, your presence is specifically requested for a special announcement regarding the state's new green building initiative. The governor hopes you will consider taking a leadership role in this important program. Please call my office to discuss details. Camilla Davis, Chief of Staff." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of the opportunity sinking in. The Green Building Initiative had been dominating headlines for months, a bold, ambitious plan to overhaul state-owned properties with cutting-edge sustainable design, backed by hundreds of millions in funding. For Horizon, a company still carving out its place, to be considered for a leadership role was both a thrilling prospect and a daunting challenge. My mind raced with possibilities, the chance to shape policy, to scale our vision, to prove what we could do on a stage this large. But beneath the excitement, a thread of caution lingered. Could we deliver at this level without losing the principles that defined us? I called Tyler into my office, handing him the note. His eyes widened as he read it, a slow grin spreading across his face. "This could change everything," he said, his voice alive with possibility. "State contracts would give us the stability to fund our riskier, experimental projects. If we can deliver without compromising quality," I caution, my mind already mapping out the challenges. "This kind of scale tests everything, our systems, our team, our values." "We can," Tyler replied, his certainty unshakable. "The team is ready, Olivia. You've built something extraordinary here. It's time to let it soar." His confidence echoed the quiet conviction growing inside me. I'd always known Horizon was more than a company. It was a vision born from necessity, from the ashes of a life I'd left behind. Now it felt ready to stretch beyond the boundaries I'd once imagined, to make an impact I hadn't dared dream of when I first sketched out its purpose. That evening, as I burned the midnight oil finalizing presentations for our California expansion, my phone rang, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. "Olivia Reed," I answered, my focus still half on the spreadsheet glowing before me. "Ms. Reed, I hope I'm not interrupting," came a refined voice, tinged with the polished cadence of old East Coast wealth. "This is Andrew Mitchell, Mark's father." My fingers froze on the keyboard, the name pulling me into a past I'd long since buried. In the chaos of my divorce, the name change, and Horizon's acquisition of Green Frame, I'd had no contact with Mark's family. His parents, distant and traditional, had never fully embraced me as their son's wife, tolerating me more than welcoming me. After the divorce, I'd assumed they'd erased me from their lives entirely, especially given the public nature of Horizon's takeover of Green Frame, the company Mark had once led. "Mr. Mitchell," I said, my voice steady but guarded, unsure how to navigate this unexpected call. "I apologize for reaching out so suddenly," he continued, his tone softer than I remembered. "I've been following your work with Horizon. The Riverside Restoration Project in particular caught my eye. Of all our projects, Riverside was the one closest to my heart. Transforming a contaminated industrial site into a mixed-income housing development, complete with restored habitats along the water's edge, had been a gamble, financially risky but vital for the environment. It was the kind of project Mark would have vetoed without a second thought. "Thank you," I said cautiously. "It's a project we're deeply proud of." As you should be, Andrew replied, and then, after a pause, his voice grew quieter, almost hesitant. I never had the chance to speak with you after everything. I want to say I'm sorry for how things ended with Mark and for not being more supportive during your marriage. The apology caught me off guard, leaving me momentarily speechless. Andrew Mitchell had always seemed like an extension of his son, polished, ambitious, and driven by self-interest. This humility, this regret, was a side of him I'd never seen. For a moment, I was back in the old life, navigating the subtle slights of a family that had never quite seen me as enough. But that moment passed quickly. I appreciate that, I said, my voice calm but final. But I've made peace with the past. Horizon is my focus now. And you've built something remarkable, he acknowledged, his tone shifting to one of purpose. Which is why I'm calling. I'm on the board of the Climate Resilience Foundation. We're looking to fund innovative architectural solutions for sea-level adaptation in vulnerable coastal communities. Your floating community design is exactly the kind of forward-thinking work we want to support. My mind raced, processing the implications. The Climate Resilience Foundation was a titan in the environmental world, with resources that could catapult our experimental designs to new heights. I'm listening, I said, leaning forward. We're hosting a symposium next month in Boston, Andrew continued. I'd like to invite you to present your work and discuss potential funding for broader implementation. All expenses paid, of course. The offer was a crossroads, one that stirred a complex mix of emotions. Working with Mark's father would inevitably dredge up memories I'd fought hard to leave behind. The years of feeling diminished, the pain of betrayal. Yet, the opportunity aligned perfectly with Horizon's mission, offering a chance to amplify our impact on a scale I'd only dreamed of. The old Rebecca might have shied away, wary of the emotional weight, but Olivia Reed made decisions based on vision, not fear. Send me the details, I said. I'd be happy to present our work. After we hung up, I sat in my office, the quiet hum of Portland's skyline stretching out before me. The city that had cradled my transformation now felt like a starting point, not an end point. Boston, California, the state capital, Horizon's reach was expanding, and with it, my own sense of possibility. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor, my friend and occasional confidant. Word has it you've been invited to lead the Green Building Initiative. Drinks to celebrate? I smiled, typing back. And the Climate Resilience Foundation wants us to present in Boston. Double celebration in order. Her reply came quickly. Impressive. Rooftop bar, 8:30. I gathered my things, ready to head out, when a final email notification caught my eye. The sender was Jessica, a name I hadn't seen in over a year, not since her awkward visit to my office after the divorce. The subject line was simple. Congratulations. Curiosity won out and I opened it. Olivia, I saw the feature about Horizon in Architectural Digest. The work you're doing is inspiring. I wanted you to know I'm getting married next month to someone who treats me with the respect you always deserved but never received from Mark. Your courage in rebuilding your life helped me find the strength to demand better for myself. I will always be grateful for that gift. Wishing you continued success, Jessica. I closed the email without replying, a strange calm settling over me. I felt neither anger nor warmth, just a quiet acknowledgement of her words and a genuine hope that she'd found something better. Our friendship was a relic of a past life, broken beyond repair, but there was a certain poetry in knowing my reinvention had sparked something positive in her, however indirectly. At the rooftop bar, Eleanor and I settled at a corner table, the city's lights twinkling below, and the mountains looming faintly in the distance. She studied me with her sharp, perceptive gaze. You look different tonight, she observed. Something's shifted. I sipped my cocktail, considering her words. I think I'm finally looking forward without glancing back, I said slowly. These opportunities, the Green Building Initiative, the symposium, they're not about proving anything to Mark or reclaiming what I lost. They're about what Horizon can become, what I can build. Eleanor nodded, a knowing smile tugging at her lips. That's freedom, she said simply. The final stage of reinvention, when your new self stands on its own, no longer defined by the old one. Is that your professional divorce attorney wisdom? I teased, raising an eyebrow. She laughed, her eyes glinting with warmth. More my personal experience. I was married too, 20 years to a man who chipped away at my confidence until there was almost nothing left. When I finally left, I spent years building myself in opposition to him, proving I could be everything he said I wasn't. This was new. Eleanor had always been guarded about her personal life, even as our friendship grew. When did that change? I asked, genuinely curious. When I realized I was making choices to spite him, not to fulfill myself, she said, her voice steady but reflective. True freedom came when his opinions stopped mattering, when he became irrelevant to who I was. Her words hit home, mirroring my own journey. For the first year after the divorce, I'd fueled myself with the thought of Mark's reaction to my success, the satisfaction of building something better than what he'd tried to take. But over time, that fire had faded, replaced by a purer drive, the joy of creation, the thrill of possibility. To her relevance, I said, raising my glass. Eleanor clinked hers against mine, her smile wide. And to the remarkable women we became without them. As autumn gave way to winter, my focus turned to preparing for the governor's ceremony and the Boston Symposium. I assembled a team to craft a presentation for the Climate Resilience Foundation, emphasizing our most innovative designs, floating structures, permeable surfaces, living shorelines that worked with rising sea levels rather than against them. Meanwhile, discussions with the governor's office moved swiftly. The Green Building Initiative would start with a comprehensive assessment of state properties, followed by retrofitting and new construction guided by sustainability standards Horizon would help develop. It was a massive responsibility, one that would require expanding our team and possibly opening a satellite office near the state capitol. We'll need at least 15 new hires, Tyler said during a planning session, his brow furrowed as he mapped out the logistics. Specialists in energy modeling, material science, carbon life cycle assessment. And training programs, I added. We can't just hire experts. There aren't enough out there. We'll need to build them. The challenges were steep, but the potential was staggering. If we succeeded, our model could ripple outward, influencing how entire states approach sustainable design. As the Boston Symposium drew closer, I found myself wondering about the inevitable meeting with Andrew Mitchell. What would it feel like to face Mark's father as Olivia Reed, CEO, rather than Rebecca Morgan, the daughter-in-law who never quite fit? The thought stirred no anxiety, only a calm curiosity about this new chapter of my life. 3 days before my departure for Boston, another unexpected call came, this time from James Carson, a close friend and Horizon's most prominent client. "Olivia," he greeted warmly, "I hope you're sitting down, because I've got news that might shake you up." "Good news or bad?" I asked, instantly alert. "Complicated," he replied. "Arcadia Partners has filed for bankruptcy." I paused, processing the news. Arcadia, the firm that had nearly acquired Green Frame before my divorce upended everything, was a giant in luxury real estate. Their collapse would ripple through the industry. "That's surprising," I said, "but how does it affect Horizon? We've never worked with them." "No, but it's not just about them," James explained. "Word is, Mark's new firm in Chicago is tangled up with Arcadia's finances. They were the primary architectural partner on 3 major projects, all now stalled. Industry talk suggests his firm might not survive." I leaned back, the news settling over me like a strange, distant echo. Mark, who had once pushed to sell Green Frame to Arcadia against my protests, now faced potential ruin because of their mismanagement. "I'm not sure how to feel about that," I admitted. "You don't need to feel anything," James said gently. "It's just information, not a burden. I thought you should know before it hits the industry grapevine. Someone's bound to bring it up in Boston." He was right. The architectural world was small and gossip traveled fast. Better to be prepared than blindsided. But as I thanked him and ended the call, I realized something profound. Mark's potential failure stirred nothing in me. No satisfaction, no sympathy, just a neutral curiosity, like hearing about a distant competitor's struggles. The emotional tether that once bound me to him was gone. That evening, as I packed for Boston, I found an old photo tucked among my things. Mark and me at the groundbreaking for Greenframe's first major project 8 years ago. Our smiles were bright, his arm around my shoulders, our faces alight with hope. Back then, I'd thought we were happy, that my role as his supporter was enough. I'd mistaken being useful for being loved. Now, looking at that photo, I felt no pang of nostalgia, only a quiet recognition of how far I'd come. In Boston, the symposium would mark another step forward, a chance to showcase Horizon's vision on a global stage. The governor's initiative, I also madam, the Climate Resilience Foundation, the California expansion, each was a thread in a larger tapestry, one I was weaving with intention and clarity. Portland's skyline, once the backdrop of my reinvention, now felt like a launching pad for something greater. And as I stepped into that future, I carried no weight from the past, only the freedom to build, to create, to become. 5 years later, I stood on the balcony of my Seattle apartment, the Puget Sound shimmering under a sunset that painted the water in hues of amber and gold. The view was a touchstone, grounding me on evenings like this when monumental decisions loomed. Horizon Innovations had grown beyond my wildest dreams, evolving from a personal act of defiance into a global architectural movement with offices in Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, and Boston. Our floating community prototype had become a beacon of climate adaptation, featured in international journals, while our Green Building Initiative had reshaped state facilities across 3 states, with more adopting our standards annually. My phone buzzed with a call from Tyler, now Horizon's Chief Operations Officer. The investors sent the final term sheet, he said. It's exactly what we wanted. Full commitment to our sustainability standards and employee ownership model. I exhaled, the gravity of the decision settling over me. Taking Horizon public would unlock capital for global expansion, allowing us to scale our climate-resilient designs. But it would also thrust my carefully guarded personal history, Greenframe's acquisition, my divorce, my name change, into the spotlight. What do you think? I asked, valuing Tyler's insight. It's the right move, he replied after a pause. We've proven our model. Going public will let us shift industry standards. But Olivia, are you ready for this? The question cut deep. The quiet reinvention of Olivia Reed would become a public narrative. My past dissected in boardrooms and headlines. I need to think, I said. Let's talk tomorrow. As the last light faded from the sky, Seattle's skyline flickered to life, a city that had become my home as Horizon expanded northward. The distance from Portland, where Rebecca Morgan's memories lingered in every familiar street, had been intentional, a final step in defining my life by choice, not reaction. My intercom buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. Ms. Reed, there's an Eleanor Dawson here, the doorman said. I smiled, surprised but delighted. Eleanor, my sharp-witted friend and legal counsel, rarely visited Seattle. Send her up. When she stepped into my apartment, her expression was unreadable, a rarity for someone whose insight had guided me through my darkest days. I was in the neighborhood, she said with a dry smile, the lie hanging playfully between us. Portland to Seattle's quite a neighborhood, I teased, leading her to the balcony. What's this about? She accepted a glass of wine, her gaze lingering on the view before meeting mine. I heard about the IPO talks. The disclosure team contacted me for historical details. They'll need the full story, Olivia. Everything. I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. Going public meant exposing the betrayal, the acquisition, the name change. I know, I said. I've been grappling with what that means. Eleanor studied me, her eyes softening. 5 years ago, you'd have said no. The thought of your story becoming public would have been unbearable. But now? I sipped my wine, gathering my thoughts. Now it's different. Mark and Jessica shaped me, but they don't define me. Horizon's success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about the work, the impact. Eleanor's face lit with quiet pride. That's what I hoped you'd say. She pulled a manila envelope from her bag. The draft disclosure statement. It tells your story with integrity, the betrayal, the acquisition, your reinvention. It's honest, but it's yours. I took the envelope, feeling the weight of the choice it represented. Not just for Horizon, but for the woman I had become, one who had turned betrayal into purpose, loss into innovation, and a new name into a legacy of authenticity. The weight of the envelope in my hands felt like more than just paper. It carried the gravity of a decision that could reshape my future and the trajectory of Horizon Innovations. I stood in my Seattle office, the city's skyline stretching beyond the window, its glass towers reflecting the late afternoon sun. Eleanor, my trusted advisor and friend, sat across from me, her expression a blend of encouragement and scrutiny. She had just asked the question that hung in the air like a challenge. Do you think taking Horizon public is the right move? I paused, letting the question settle into the quiet spaces of my mind. My fingers traced the edge of the envelope, its contents a formal proposal for the initial public offering, IPO, that would thrust Horizon and me into a new realm of visibility. Eleanor's gaze was steady, her usual thoroughness evident as she waited for my response. She wasn't just asking about the business case, she was probing deeper into the personal stakes of this moment. The real question, she said, leaning forward slightly, isn't whether this is right for Horizon. The numbers speak for themselves: strong growth, innovative projects, a clear vision. The question is whether it's right for you, Olivia. Are you ready to step fully into the spotlight? To let the world see not just the brilliant architect and CEO, but the woman who turned personal ruin into a professional revolution? Her words stirred a cascade of emotions I hadn't fully unpacked in years. I thought of the woman I used to be, Rebecca Morgan, standing in a Chicago kitchen, the scent of an uneaten anniversary dinner lingering as my marriage and sense of self unraveled. That version of me had been defined by others' perceptions, her worth tethered to a husband who betrayed her and a life that collapsed under the weight of his ambition and deceit. The idea of standing in the light back then would have terrified her, exposure feeling like a threat rather than a triumph. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Olivia Reed had emerged from that wreckage, not just surviving but building something extraordinary. Horizon Innovations, a company that didn't just design buildings, but reimagined how communities could thrive in harmony with the planet. Yes, I said, my voice steady, a quiet conviction settling in my chest. I'm ready. The simplicity of the words belied the journey they represented. I wasn't just agreeing to an IPO, I was embracing the full arc of my story, no longer hiding behind a new name or shielding myself from the past. I was ready to be seen, not just as a leader, but as someone who had forged strength from sorrow, who had turned devastation into creation. Eleanor's face lit up with a rare, unguarded smile, her eyes warm with approval. Good, she said, her tone carrying a hint of pride, because there's something else you need to know. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded newspaper, a national business publication I rarely bothered with. Page 6, she said, sliding it across the desk. I unfolded it, my eyes landing on a headline that sent a jolt through me. Mitchell Architecture files for bankruptcy amid scandal. The article laid bare the collapse of my ex-husband Mark's Chicago firm, not just from the long-rumored fallout of the Arcadia project, but from years of financial mismanagement. Mark himself was under investigation for potentially defrauding investors, with former partners accusing him of misrepresenting the firm's health to secure funding. The final paragraph mentioned Green Frame Designs, his former company, now absorbed into the thriving Horizon Innovations under my leadership. When did this publish? I asked, my voice calm despite the unexpected news. The words felt distant, as if they belonged to a story I'd once known, but no longer lived. 3 days ago, Eleanor replied, her tone measured. I thought you should see it before it comes up in investor discussions. Your story will inevitably be contrasted with his, especially once the connection becomes public knowledge. I folded the newspaper carefully, setting it aside as I processed the information. Years ago, news of Mark's failure might have sparked a flicker of vindication, a quiet satisfaction at seeing his recklessness catch up with him. But now I felt only a faint pity, not for his downfall, but for the man he'd always been. Mark had chased appearances, prioritizing flash over substance, ambition over integrity. His choices had built a house of cards, and its collapse was as inevitable as it was unsurprising. Poor choices yield poor outcomes, I said finally, meeting Eleanor's gaze. Mark always took shortcuts. It was only a matter of time. Eleanor studied me, her expression one of quiet admiration. No anger, no gloating, just a clear-eyed perspective. You've really completed the journey, haven't you? I smiled, appreciating her insight. It's been 5 years, Eleanor. Mark feels like a character from a novel I read long ago, someone I understood at the time but can barely recall now. The words felt true, a testament to how far I'd come. The pain of his betrayal, once a sharp wound, had faded into a distant memory, replaced by the life I'd built on my own terms. We spent the rest of the evening diving into the IPO details, disclosure requirements, timelines, potential impacts on Horizon's future. By the time Eleanor left to catch her late flight back to Portland, we had charted a clear path forward, one that embraced my story and Horizon's origins without shame or concealment. I went to bed that night feeling a sense of clarity, the weight of the decision settling into a quiet resolve. The next morning, I woke early and laced up my running shoes, heading out along Seattle's waterfront. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the briny scent of the Puget Sound. Ferries glided across the water, coffee shops opened their doors, and the city hummed with the rhythm of a new day. As my feet pounded the pavement, I thought of the woman I'd been when this journey began, shocked and broken, standing in that Chicago kitchen, unable to imagine a future beyond the ruins of her life. That woman could never have envisioned leading a company with hundreds of employees, influencing architectural standards across multiple states, or considering an IPO that would value Horizon at over $300 million. More than that, she couldn't have imagined the internal shift, the move from seeking validation in others' eyes to knowing her worth so deeply that external judgments no longer mattered. Back at my apartment, I showered and dressed for a video conference with Horizon's executive team. As I prepared my notes, my phone rang, an unfamiliar international number flashing on the screen. Olivia Reed, I answered, tucking the phone against my shoulder. Susan, Reed, this is Adrienne Fontaine with the International Climate Adaptation Council in Geneva, came a crisp, professional voice with a slight French accent. I hope I'm not calling at an inconvenient time. Not at all, I said, curiosity piqued. The council was a prestigious organization, known for coordinating global responses to climate change, particularly for vulnerable regions. Excellent, Adrienne continued. Your work with floating communities and coastal adaptation strategies has caught our attention. We're forming an architectural advisory committee to develop guidelines for climate-resilient housing in flood-prone areas. We'd be honored if you'd consider serving as committee chair. The invitation hit me like a gust of wind, unexpected and exhilarating. This wasn't just another project, it was a chance to shape global standards, to influence how communities worldwide would adapt to rising seas and intensifying storms. My mind raced, already rearranging priorities, weighing how this role might intersect with Horizon's expansion and the IPO. The timing was tight, but the opportunity aligned perfectly with Horizon's mission, creating built environments that worked with nature, prioritizing both human and ecological well-being. I'm very interested, I said, my voice measured but eager. What would the commitment involve? Adrienne outlined the details: quarterly meetings in Geneva, remote work in between, a 2-year appointment with the goal of publishing comprehensive guidelines for UN adoption. As she spoke, I felt a surge of excitement tempered by the practical realities of my schedule. But the alignment was undeniable. This was the kind of impact I dreamed of when founding Horizon. I'd like to accept, I said when she finished, pending some discussions with my team about scheduling. Wonderful, Adrienne replied warmly. We'll send the formal invitation today. The first meeting is in January. We look forward to working with you, Ms. Reed. After we hung up, I sat for a moment, letting the implications sink in. Geneva, an international role, a chance to extend Horizon's vision to a global stage. The path ahead was expanding, opening doors I hadn't dared to imagine when I first started this journey. The video conference with Horizon's executive team began promptly at 10 a.m., faces appearing on my screen from Portland, San Francisco, and Boston. This was the leadership team that had grown with the company, each member bringing unique expertise and a shared commitment to our mission. Before we dive into the IPO, I began, I want to share 2 developments that may factor into our plans. I outlined Mark's bankruptcy in the council invitation, watching their expressions shift from concern to thoughtfulness. The Mitchell situation is unfortunate, but not surprising, said Amara Chen, our chief sustainability officer. The question is how it might shape perceptions of our origin story during the IPO process. I think it strengthens our narrative, Tyler countered, leaning into the camera. The contrast between Horizon's success and Mitchell's collapse highlights the difference between our values-driven approach and the conventional model he represented. The discussion unfolded, perspectives converging on a shared conclusion. Neither development changed the case for going public. If anything, the council appointment bolstered Horizon's credibility, potentially drawing more investor interest. So we're decided, I asked? We move forward with the IPO? Nods filled the screen. We're ready, Tyler said, speaking for the group. The question is, are you? This will put your personal story in the spotlight in ways we've avoided before. I smiled, no longer daunted by the prospect. I'm ready. My past isn't something I need to hide anymore. If Horizon's story can inspire others, that's a win. The meeting shifted to logistics, timelines, disclosures, communication strategies. By the end, we had a plan. Horizon would launch the IPO process immediately, aiming for a spring offering. That evening, I drafted 2 emails. The first to Adrienne Fontaine, formally accepted the council role and requested details for the January meeting. The second to Andrew Mitchell, Mark's father and a distant but respected professional connection, was harder to write. I informed him of Horizon's IPO plans and the likelihood that its connection to green frame designs would surface. I assured him that any references to my past would remain professional, focused on business rather than personal drama. Hesitating only briefly, I hit send, choosing transparency over silence. Andrew's reply came the next morning, brief but warm. Olivia, thank you for the courtesy. I wish Horizon every success with the IPO, which is well-deserved. Regarding media interest and historical connections, I trust your discretion. The contrast between Horizon's trajectory and recent events with Mitchell architecture speaks for itself. My wife and I admire your work and look forward to your next chapter. Regards, Andrew. His respect, once unimaginable given our history, underscored how far I'd come, not through vengeance, but through the quiet power of my choices. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of preparation, meetings with bankers, interviews with analysts, meticulous reviews of disclosure documents. Horizon's story was distilled into crisp prospectus language, our vision framed as market positioning, our impact quantified in numbers and metrics. Through it all, I maintained a clear line between transparency and sensationalism. Yes, I'd founded Horizon after my divorce, acquiring my ex-husband's failing company. Yes, I'd changed my name from Rebecca Morgan to Olivia Reed. These were facts, but the focus stayed on Horizon's achievements: innovative climate adaptation, reduced carbon footprints, industry-leading employee satisfaction, and consistent growth. In early December, I traveled to Portland for the opening of Horizon's latest project, a carbon-sequestering affordable housing development with urban agriculture and community-owned renewable energy. The ribbon-cutting drew media and advocates who hailed it as a model for equitable urban development. As I spoke about integrating environmental and social sustainability, I noticed a familiar figure in the crowd: Jessica, my former friend and Mark's affair partner. Our eyes met briefly, her expression unreadable. I continued my remarks, focusing on the residents who would call this place home. By the time I mingled with attendees, she was gone. Later, a staff member handed me an envelope. "Someone asked me to give this to you," she said. Inside was a handwritten note on plain stationery. "Olivia, I almost didn't come today, but I wanted to see what you've built. It's remarkable. Not just the building, but what it stands for. Sustainable housing for those who need it most, the kind of project Mark dismissed as unprofitable. I read about Horizon's IPO and your council appointment. I'm not surprised by your success, only by my own failure to see your potential when we were friends. That's what I regret most, not just the betrayal, but the blindness before it. My therapist says dwelling on past mistakes stalls growth, and she's probably right. But your transformation, from devastation to creation, has been a guiding light for me, even from afar. I wish you continued success and fulfillment, Jessica." I folded the note, slipping it into my pocket. The anger that once burned at the thought of Jessica had long since faded, replaced not by indifference but by a nuanced understanding. We all make mistakes, and we all have the capacity for growth. Jessica's journey was her own, separate from the narrative I'd once assigned her. That evening, over dinner with Tyler and the Portland team, the mood was warm and celebratory. As dessert arrived, Tyler raised his glass. "To Horizon's future," he said, "and to the visionary who made it possible." Glasses clinked, and I felt a deep contentment. Not just pride in our work, but a personal fulfillment I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago. The journey that began with betrayal had led to a life of authenticity and impact, one I was ready to share with the world as Horizon stepped into its next chapter. As I stood before my colleagues, their familiar faces glowing with shared purpose, I raised a glass. "To supporting Mark's constrained vision at Greenframe, and to all of you," I said, my voice steady but warm, sweeping my gaze across the room. These weren't just co-workers. They were comrades, bound by the dream we'd woven together into something tangible and transformative. Horizon wasn't merely my brainchild. It was our collective creation, a testament to what happens when hearts and minds align to build something that matters. I felt a quiet pride swell in my chest, not just for what we'd achieved, but for the trust we'd cultivated, the unspoken understanding that we were in this together. That night, back in my Portland apartment, a space I'd kept despite making Seattle my primary home, I lingered in the stillness. The apartment was more than a convenience. It was an anchor to Horizon's roots, a tether to a chapter I wasn't ready to close entirely. As I prepared for bed, my thoughts drifted to the parallels between personal growth and architectural innovation. The strongest buildings don't defy change. They embrace it. They sway with seismic tremors rather than crumbling, rise with floodwaters instead of succumbing. I'd come to see my own resilience in the same light. Betrayal hadn't hardened me into something brittle. It had taught me to bend, to channel its force into a reimagining of who I could be. The pain of Mark's infidelity, once a jagged wound, had become the current that carried me toward a new self, one forged not in resistance, but in adaptation. The next morning I woke before dawn, the city still cloaked in quiet. Lacing up my running shoes, I set out through the neighborhood where Mark and I had once shared a life. The house we'd called ours stood unchanged, yet entirely foreign. A young family lived there now, their presence marked by tricycles scattered on the lawn and vibrant crayon drawings taped to the windows. I slowed my pace, my breath visible in the crisp air, and let the sight settle over me. This was the life I'd once envisioned: children, stability, a future with Mark. He'd always pushed the idea of kids to some vague later, a deferral that, in hindsight, spoke volumes. But as I stood there, heart pounding from the run, I felt no pang of loss. That house, that dream, would have confined me in ways I couldn't see back then. Mark's betrayal, excruciating as it was, had been the crack that let light into my world. It wasn't an end, but a beginning, a painful, necessary catalyst for a transformation deeper than mere healing. Returning to my apartment, I showered, the hot water washing away the morning's chill and the weight of those memories. Sitting down with a cup of coffee, I opened my laptop to find the final prospectus for Horizon's IPO waiting in my inbox. The document was meticulous, laying out our financials, growth plans, risks, and strengths with precision. But it was the leadership section that drew my eye. My professional biography distilled into polished paragraphs. Those words captured the milestones but glossed over the raw, messy truth of the journey. The betrayal that shattered Rebecca Morgan. The fear that gripped me as I stepped into Olivia Reed. The sleepless nights spent building Horizon from a vision into a reality. They were invisible in those clean sentences. Yet their simplicity felt honest. No embellishment, no evasion, just a clear acknowledgement of the path that led me here. I approved the document without edits and sent it back to the legal team, the act feeling both momentous and routine, another step in a journey that kept unfolding in ways I never could have foreseen. That afternoon, I met with Horizon's Portland leadership team to plan for my upcoming commitments in Geneva. The role would demand significant time in Europe, requiring us to recalibrate our operational structure. Tyler, ever steady, reassured me. "We've been preparing for this," he said, his tone brimming with confidence. The regional directors are ready to step up, and video calls will bridge the gap. Horizon's in good hands while you were shaping global standards. His words weren't just encouragement. They reflected the truth of what we'd built. Horizon had grown beyond my singular vision into a resilient organization, its strength rooted in shared leadership and a unified purpose. It would thrive without my constant presence, just as I would grow through the challenges awaiting me. As the meeting wrapped up, Tyler stayed behind, his expression thoughtful. "I've been meaning to ask," he said once we were alone. "The IPO, the council role, these are huge shifts. How are you holding up?" His question, direct yet laced with care, was quintessential Tyler. Over 5 years of working together, he'd become more than a colleague, a confidant whose insight I valued deeply. Our bond, though professional, carried a quiet intimacy, a mutual understanding that went beyond the workplace. I paused, letting the question sink in. "I'm ready," I said finally, my voice soft but certain. When I started Horizon, when I became Olivia Reed, it was about taking back what I'd lost: my career, my self-worth, my belief in sustainable design. But somewhere along the way, it became bigger than me. The IPO, the council, they're about amplifying what we've built together. Tyler's nod held a quiet pride, his eyes reflecting the weight of my words. "You've moved from reacting to creating," he said, "from rebuilding after betrayal to forging something entirely new." His words struck a chord, resonating with the truth I'd come to embody. Packing for my return to Seattle that evening, I thought about the arc of my journey. From the gut-wrenching moment I discovered Mark's affair with Jessica to the creation of Horizon, from acquiring Greenframe to preparing for our public offering, every step had reshaped me. Rebecca Morgan had been a woman defined by others' expectations. Olivia Reed was a declaration of my own truth. The betrayal hadn't broken me. It had revealed me, uncovering a strength and vision I hadn't known I possessed. I tucked a small, framed photo into my suitcase, not of my old life, but of Horizon's first project, a building that embodied our mission, surrounded by the team that brought it to life. Their faces, lit with pride, were a reminder of what we'd achieved together. As I zipped the bag closed, my phone buzzed with a final email. Confirmation of my Geneva arrangements, including an agenda for the council meeting. The topics were ambitious: architectural standards for sea level rise, pathways for vulnerable communities, blending indigenous wisdom with cutting-edge innovation. This work, global and collaborative, was another evolution of the purpose born from my personal crisis. What began as survival had become creation, and now contribution on a scale I never could have imagined. I set my alarm for an early flight and turned off the light, the darkness outside my window absolute yet somehow comforting. Dawn was coming, another beginning, another chance to build something meaningful. The journey that started with betrayal had no endpoint, only growth, impact, and the deep satisfaction of living authentically in a name and purpose I'd claimed as my own. As I drifted towards sleep, I felt at peace, not just with where I'd been, but with wherever I was headed next.